Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today I want to talk about virtual reality, specifically with the Vive, and what role this instrument is going to play in gaming's future. Now, this little game I'm playing here is quite honestly one of the most addictive things I've found to do with the Vive. It's just a mini game that is part of the Lab, which is Valve's basically VR intro experience. They sort of give you some ideas of what you can do in VR and show off the controls and stuff, and they made this little archery game called Longbow. It's incredibly fun and addictive, and it's really unfortunate that there's only one level to it and there's no actual scoring system, because all I want to do is compete and play this game all day long, but it's so limited, and I've sunk hours and hours and hours into this tiny little single level that they made. Without question though, Valve has easily convinced me that this hardware is an excellent platform for game development in the future. The only problem is that they haven't really made any big games to launch the platform with, which is very different compared to, say, any other console platform that's ever launched. It always comes out with big name title games that will sell the console and get people interested. Unfortunately, the Vive doesn't really have any giant games yet. They all kind of feel like mini games, sort of like apps, and this is something that I want to sink my teeth into. I want like 50 levels of this little archery game. I want to be able to compete with friends. I want to play co-op and let people trade off with targets, or somebody be on a different tower from me and shoot the same guys. I mean, there's so much more that couldn't be done with this, and it just hasn't yet. And that's just, I think, what everybody's waiting on right now. Unfortunately, the hardware is very expensive. It's like $800 for a Vive, not including shipping or anything like that. So the market, without question, is going to be significantly smaller than, say, the console market, since you also need a computer to run this as well, and the computer, generally speaking, has to have some decent hardware behind it, since you're rendering two 1080p screens that have technically different views on them. So it's a lot of rendering power that you need just to process even simplistic games. Now let me try and do my best to explain this little archery game here and why it's so addicting. Virtual reality stuff seems to be one of those things that it's really hard to explain via video without using VR goggles yourself as to why it is so cool. Yes, this is a very simplistic looking little archery game with little stick figure guys that run around, but I'm controlling the bow with one hand, my left hand, and then the arrow with my right hand. And the aim of this is actually incredibly difficult. I'm showing you a lot of clips where I'm hitting my mark pretty well, and my targets aren't particularly far away, but I feel like you have the same degree of accuracy and inaccuracy that you would with real life archery. I mean, I can miss my targets easily, and every single time I've just kind of gotten used to the game a bit, practice a bit, so I'm hitting my marks a little bit more frequently. But there is without question a huge level of skill involved here. Not as much as real archery, of course, because, you know, you need a lot more muscle power. Generally speaking, your targets are further away. There's wind to compensate for, which I don't think is in this game. But there is still that baseline level of physical skill that you need to master. And that's what's really different about VR for me than playing just a normal shooter game with a mouse and keyboard, is that I have this sort of tactile element to it. I have this physicality. When I hit a target with an arrow in this game, it feels like maybe hitting a baseball perfectly with the bat when playing baseball, or any sport for that matter, kicking or catching a ball perfectly. It's got this sort of tactile response to it that's very physically rewarding. You could also draw a parallel with, say, sinking a three-pointer in basketball. It's just got this sort of addicting, highly rewarding feeling to it once you accomplish it. And that's just something that I never felt like I would ever experience in a video game, and VR is taking it to that extra dimension for me. Now, the headset and controller are cool. The technology is well designed, it's well thought out. There's of course a few issues and things with it. I mean, VR is not a perfect, flawless system. You are staring into screens that are mounted a few inches away from your eyes, and then that image is bent around your eyes with these cool lenses. It gets hot. It kind of feels like there's a little bit of a heater right in front of your eyes the whole time, and extended gameplay can definitely make your head feel hot or sort of make you feel worn out a little bit. It's easy to overcome it, especially if you're playing a game that's really fun. You don't pay attention to it as much, but perhaps if you're playing something a little slower, you might be a little bit more conscious of the fact that there's a fairly hot VR headset on your face. However, the brain trickery that goes on here of what they call presence, basically making you feel like you are where you are in the video game. What I see in the video game is just as real to me as what I see when I take the headset off. That element of presence there is uncanny. It's absolutely amazing, and just the thing that you definitely can't get from watching this video is the depth perception. As each eye is seeing a slightly offset image, it is 3D virtual reality. It's something that's not really mentioned that much, but some people might forget that you're actually feeling the distance, which is what's so cool about the archery game here. Is I'm not just sort of seeing targets and judging how far away they are based on how big they are on screen, but I can actually judge their distance based on stereoscopic vision and the general tools that the human brain uses to judge distance in real life. It is very, very cool, just feeling so natural about it. Now, without question, the ability to stand up, move around, engage with your environment is so much more interesting than what was offered with the original Oculus dev kits. I mean, I know Oculus is working on the same hand controllers and the same features as the Vive, but having owned an Oculus DK2, I wasn't overly impressed with just sort of sitting stationary and playing, say, flight simulator games or something like that. Having the feedback of the handheld controllers and this sort of tactile sensation that I am partaking in the world is so much more immersive, and it's something that I honestly didn't think would be that important to me. I thought, you know, oh, flight sim games and racing games, those will be fine, but actually being able to stand up and sort of move my body around and have the head trackers track where I am just adds this extra layer of immersion that is so cool, and I can't wait to see people take advantage of it more and make more video games around it. Now, this little shooter game here is called Space Pirate Trainer, and it's fun. It has a different feeling certainly than the archery game. I wasn't actually enjoying the shooting mechanics as much as I thought I would. The controllers seem to sort of be ideal for shooting, but one-handed shooting doesn't really allow you to stabilize the controller that much, so I found a lot of wobble in my shots compared to what I would be used to when shooting a handgun with, say, two hands on it. You use that second hand for stability, and you don't have to worry about all these random shots going off here and there. I would absolutely love to have sort of an assault rifle controller where you have multiple points of contact: your front hand, your back hand, your shoulder, and then potentially your cheek if you're resting your head on the weapon to aim down sights. Something like that would be really cool. But I'm also starting to feel that the tactile sensation, sort of like vibrations from the controller, or maybe a recoil simulator for a rifle controller, would be incredibly important to kind of sell the concept, the realism of the experience. Now, the controller feedback wasn't necessarily something that I thought would be important in VR. It's always been something that I didn't really care about for console games, like controller vibrations. I've never thought were like that big of an impact to the games themselves. But in VR, they can be used really effectively, like I said before, with the bow game. Having a small increments of vibration as I pull the arrow back gives me a very good understanding of how taut the bowstring is and how fast that arrow is going to fly when I release it, and it's really cool, and I can't imagine actually playing that game without that kind of tactile sensation. Now, one thing that Space Pirate Trainer taught me was that my room setup wasn't exactly ideal yet. You do need as big a space as possible for this. They say ideally 15 by 15 or something like that, which is huge. I mean, I don't have any office rooms in my entire house that are 15 by 15. That's an incredibly large space. It's pretty much a living room when removing like the couches and stuff like that. That's the only general rooms I can think in anybody's house that would be that big to actually do VR. That being said, I did set it up in my office, and I had a very, very small space for it. I would say it's like 2 by 2 meters, so that's not very big at all. And I was a little bit limited in the range at which I could sort of dodge stuff in Space Pirate Trainer. In addition to that, though, it took a little bit of finessing when sensing up my tracker units for the Vive, because you need these little boxes that go up in the corners of your room to sort of sense the position of your controllers and your headset and all that stuff. and there were a few angles or a few areas of my movement area where my gun or my headset would kind of glitch out a bit, and I was getting a lot of that in Space Pirate Trainer, and that really killed the immersion for me. So setting up your room properly is not as simple as I was hoping it would be, and it could take quite a bit of troubleshooting until you get it just right. There's also the issue of games that require a lot of movement and looking around. The headset can look very good when you're standing up and looking straight forward. When you look down though, the tension of your straps might change a little bit, and even moving the lenses away or towards your eyes in the distance of say a millimeter can change the focus of certain areas of the screen, and that can be a little off-putting at times. So it almost works better if you don't have to look down a lot, or look up and then look down and all that kind of stuff. If you're mostly looking straight forward, that's really sort of the ideal situation for the Oculus. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff they can do with this platform, and I'm really just sort of sitting here waiting for better games to come out or more immersive games to come out. Nobody's put out a AAA title yet. I was hoping that Valve would do something like that. I mean, they've got the budget. This is their platform. They really should have put out a AAA VR title to sell the platform. I think that's what the Vive needs, is like some amazing game, because the hardware has proven itself in my mind. That little archery game that I've sunk hours and hours and hours and hours into is good enough. They could have just put more levels behind that, and then that would actually be a decent little game. It wouldn't be a AAA game, but it would be something that I would probably have played for even more hours, especially if there's co-op or competitive play in that, shooting arrows at each other. That would be amazing, and I can't wait to try out more of that stuff. But having a big AAA game, like a really cool big shooter online that you can move around in, and then of course there's the movement system. You are kind of limited to a small box there, so they have to kind of invent weird teleportation mechanics and stuff. But if they have like an Omni treadmill, or some of the there's a device called the Omni, I think, that some company's working on, that's supposed to allow you to simulate walking while in VR. These kind of things I think are going to be essential for the future of VR and creating these much bigger, more immersive games. I mean, I can imagine what it would be like playing an MMORPG in one of these. That would be so incredibly cool, sieging a dungeon in virtual reality. So the hardware in my mind is really up to snuff at this point. It's just a matter of developers putting some more time in there and making some games that are going to capture my attention for the long run, or some games that are going to have excellent co-op play and multiplayer play. That is something that I think is going to sell this platform better in the long run, and we just sort of need like a Halo-esque type thing, something that sold the Xbox. We now need something to sell the Vive. Anyway, I'll be keeping you guys updated on my adventures in virtual reality. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.